Hi, this is Brian. Welcome back to Philosopher's Notes TV. Today we have another great book, Your Brain at Work by David Rock. Your Brain at Work, subtitle, Strategies for Overcoming Distraction, Regaining Focus, and Working Smarter All Day Long. Awesome book. It's basically a manual on the neuroscience of work. David Rock is a leading business consultant and author who's done an amazing job of integrating neuroscience and leadership. He spent several years working with and interviewing dozens of leading neuroscientists to boil down these ideas into an applicable, practical look at how we can use these neuroscientific principles at work. I love it. Philosopher's Note, bunch of big ideas. 5 of my favorite ones here. A couple other quick things. The way that he wrote the book is fascinating. He basically did it in the style of a play where you had different scenes throughout the book. So you didn't have chapters, you had scenes, right? And then he looked at 2 different people, I think it was Emily and Paul, who were a married couple, and we watched them go through their day. Scene 1 is kissing the kids and going off to work, and then what? Right? Then scene 2, scene 3, scene 4, and then we get to the end of the day. And then he walks us through 2 different takes. The first take is how most of us do it most of the time. Suboptimal, not knowing about this brain science wisdom and kind of sort of stubbing our toe often, right? And then he says, okay, well, this is what was going on. Let's do take 2. Let's look at what they just did and what would have happened if they made a tiny change. And he makes the point again and again throughout the book that tiny changes in your brain and in your mind and how you're perceiving the world can make huge changes in your life. So anyway, you have take 1, suboptimal. Take 2 is this is your brain at work optimally and what these characters would do in that scene if they knew these things and applied them. It's a really cool, interesting way to approach sharing this wisdom. I enjoyed it. I think you might as well. So first big idea. This is scene 1. Scene 1, Emily, the woman in our story, just got a promotion a week ago, right? She kisses the kids, goes to work. Then what does she do? Well, in the first take, she jumps into email. 100 emails come rushing at her, right? All of a sudden, her cortisol spikes and she's feeling that stress. And then what? Well, then she kind of sort of goes through the day and she's a little behind and she doesn't really get clarity on what's going to make this week awesome and what's going to make today awesome. So the lesson here, the very first lesson that David teaches us about is the fact that we need to prioritize prioritizing. We need to make prioritizing our day a priority because that's a very energy intensive thing to do. And he makes the point again and again and again and again that our brain has a very limited, our prefrontal cortex to be specific, has a very limited stage, to use the play metaphor. There's a stage on which our life is unfolding. And he says it's more like your closet than it is a huge performance hall. It's a small stage. Your brain can only handle so much at one time, and it gets easily depleted. So if you jump online and check your email first thing, it's actually really hard to recover from that and then prioritize your day effectively, because that takes a lot of energy. And if you've already burned it, even just 10 minutes on email, he says, is enough to exhaust your brain to the point where you don't want to do the complex stuff. Then you just do more easy stuff, checking more email and constantly reacting. So prioritizing is the scene number 1, first big idea. And this is life-changing stuff. To actually start your day, your AM bookend that we talk about all the time, right? Here's your day. You got your AM and your PM bookends. You have the most control over this. The middle of the day is harder to control. When we talk about Masterpiece Days 101 in our class on that, I talked about this idea from Darren Hardy. And you need to take control of this AM1 bookend. I say in the note that if I had to isolate the primary reason why I'm able to sustain a reasonably high level of creative productivity, it's because I honor this. I do not check email until I've done something very constructive. I've done the most important thing that I've determined for that day before I hop online. So in addition to my fundamentals and the digital sunset from the night before, this is probably the most important thing I've done to change my life. And if you're waking up and immediately checking your emails, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to prioritize prioritizing and slow down and identify what's most important for you. And if you really want to go nuts, be like Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, who says he doesn't waste a brain cell in the morning thinking about what he's going to do. He just does it. He's already decided. He's done a meta prioritizing, and he just has systems that he lets run throughout his day. We're going to talk about that in the third big idea. But that's our first big idea. Prioritize prioritizing. Huge, life-changing. If you're not already engaging in this creative work, the deep work before you hop on email, try it. I promise you. A, you'll find it hard to do because you're so addicted to going online. And B, you'll find extraordinary things come through if you just show up and let that compound over time. Second big idea is related to that one, but I think it's scene 3. And in scene 3, we learn that constantly, I think it was the University of London, they did a study and they realized that constantly emailing and texting diminishes your mental capacity by the equivalent of reducing your IQ by 15 points if you're a guy, 5 points if you're a woman, right? Average of 10-point reduction in your IQ if you're constantly emailing and texting. And in addition to diminishing your IQ, which then obviously diminishes your performance, you also are just bombarding your nervous system with more stimuli than it can handle. Your hormones of cortisol and adrenaline, all this are just constantly firing. And we did not evolve, as we talk about all the time, to have this much stimulation. Alberto Villoldo says we get exposed to more stimuli in a week than our ancient ancestors were exposed to in their entire lifetimes, right? He says it's as if the entire jungle is roaring at us when we evolved to have a fight or flight response for one line at a time, and not that often. But we're having, David mentions and jokes that in those 500 emails that are coming at you, how many of them are lions? Not too many of them, hopefully, right? But that's how our body responds to that constant onslaught. Our IQ is diminished and our overall sense of vitality and well-being is diminished. Lesson here is what we talk about all the time. Another little part of Masterpiece Days. We need to make waves. We need to be on and then we need to be off. Do the deep work. Turn off your text, turn off your email. In the last episode, we talked about adding an hour to your day by blocking access to yourself. Why do you need to be constantly available? It was only a few years ago that you had to call somebody and leave a voicemail on their home answering machine, right? If you wanted to get in touch with them. This idea that everything requires a 2-second response time is silly. See it for that, do deep work and oscillate and know that being constantly on is diminishing your IQ and your overall well-being. The third big idea is your basal ganglia. So the prefrontal cortex has a very small and finite range of things it can pay attention to at any given time. But your basal ganglia can handle a ton. It puts things on routine. When I talk about in Habits 101, I talked about the fact that we need to use our willpower and our mental capacity, our prefrontal cortex functioning wisely to install habits that run on autopilot. Well, here's where our autopilot is, in our basal ganglia. That part of our brain is always looking for ways to routinize behaviors that we repeat. And David makes the point that we want to find as many ways as we possibly can to move behaviors out of our prefrontal cortex into our basal ganglia. Find simple ways to repeat certain things to save your brain cells from having, your prefrontal cortex brain cells, from having to figure everything out all the time. Because again, that's exhausting. And again, make a game out of it. Find little 4% ways you can improve. One of the examples I shared in the note is my commitment to do 1 sun salutation, 10 pull-ups, 100 burpees, 1,000 meters of rowing, and 10,000 steps. That's what I do every single day. Now, I learned that when I do my burpees earlier in the morning, I get a mood boost, which lasts throughout the day. I feel better throughout the day. And I also don't have that kind of looming sense. If it's like 5 p.m. and I haven't done my burpees, I used to kind of dread that of some days of, oh man, I got to do them. And it took more willpower than I'd like, and it wasn't as fun as I'd like. So I put those two things together and I realized, hey, I've got to do my burpees early. Let's set a goal of doing my first 50 before 8 a.m. Now I get up pretty early, right? So that's a few hours after I get up. But let's make that the goal. And then I did that for a while. And then I had fun saying, okay, well, let's program the basal ganglia. I don't want to think about it. Let's just make it automatic. How do I make it automatic? I made my meditation automatic because that's the first thing I do. And then I do 5 minutes of stretching right after I meditate. I don't need to think about that. Basal ganglia runs the show. So I wanted my basal ganglia to run the burpee show. So I set my watch for an alarm at 6:29 a.m. so that I started my first set of 10. I usually break my burpees into sets of 10. My first set I would do precisely when the alarm went off. So it's 6:30 a.m., 6:29, and I'd have 30 seconds, 45 seconds to wrap up whatever I was doing, and then bang out my first set of burpees. Then I don't need to think about it. It's on autopilot. Thank you, basal ganglia. I'm just doing it. The alarm goes off. No willpower required. It's actually really exciting for me now. I do it. I mark my calendar with a little 1, right? Roman numeral 1. Got the first one done. And I literally say to myself, every time I do that, the first one's the most important. Nice job. And I give myself a little virtual high five. And then it's easy. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. It's then easy for me to do the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth set, either then or over the next hour and a half, right? Anyway, long aside, basal ganglia is your friend. Routinize as much stuff as you possibly can. Save your prefrontal cortex. Fourth big idea, to do all this stuff, to run a beautiful play that is our life, right? Put on a great performance, we need to have a strong director, right? So we've got all these things going on the internal stage of our mind. We need to have a director that can see what's going on in our minds. Dan Siegel, who wrote the foreword to this book, calls that ability mind sight, the ability to look inside your mind, right? It's a form of mindfulness, self-awareness, etc. Now, a lot of people call that the observer or the witness perspective. Those are a little bit too abstract and cold for me. I really like the director. The director looks at what's going on and says, hey, you know what? That thought isn't particularly helpful. Or let's focus our attention here. Or let's prioritizing. That's your director making those decisions. When you find yourself getting a little off track, it's your director who says, hey, no. I need you to play this role right now. Say it this way, right? They're helping the actors perform better. We need to build a strong director. You do that in a range of ways, right? But simply becoming aware of what's going on in your mind. Learning these ideas. David makes the point again and again. Simply knowing these ideas is the most important first step, because then you know when you're off. And you can see and you can practice cultivating this ability to observe what's going on. Obviously, meditation is another huge practice. And throughout the day, another idea that didn't make our list that I talked about in the note is reappraisal. The ability to step in between stimulus and response. This happens. Let me choose the optimal appraisal. He says this is one of the most important skills. That and the ability to see your mind. Those two skills are huge. We can talk about that all afternoon. Fifth big idea is our seesaw. This is another good one. One of the chapters and scenes is all about, actually one of the sections is all about being cool under pressure. So when things heat up, which is basically every day for most of us, right? We're dealing with a lot of stress and a lot of chaos. How do you stay cool under pressure? Well, one of the scenes and one of the ideas is about our emotions. When our emotions become too high and our arousal becomes too high, how do we manage that? And he's got a really cool idea that I'm excited to share now. So basically, when you think of your brain, there's the prefrontal cortex, which is the rational side of your brain, right? To put it in very simple terms. The limbic system is where your emotions reside. So when you feel a strong emotion, whether it's fear or shame or excitement or whatever, that's your limbic system firing strongly, right? Now, if it's a strong negative emotion, and you want to be able to dampen that and control that so you can stay cool under pressure, you don't get carried away and overwhelmed or angry or whatever, he says you need to remember that your prefrontal cortex and your limbic system act kind of like a seesaw, meaning that if your limbic system is really on, your prefrontal cortex is off. right? Hot and cold. So what's exciting is that if your limbic system is really hot, you want to go into your prefrontal cortex to cool it down. And he talks about ways to do that. When you experience high emotions, there are a lot of different things you can do. You can try to suppress it, which is to pretend that it's not there, not particularly helpful. You can express it, which is just to say, I'm so angry right now or whatever. That's not particularly helpful, right? In most situations, nearly all situations. Then you can become dramatic about it and just kind of emote about it, etc. He says that what's most effective, the research shows, is if you label it. So if you have this high limbic experience of, wow, I'm feeling this surge of fear, you want to notice that. That's your director noticing it. And then you say, I'm feeling fear. 1 or 2 words to identify the emotion. Not a whole, wow, I'm feeling fear, and this is because this is like that situation that I messed up before. Oh my God, I messed it up 100 times. I think it's because my father was an alcoholic and this happened to me and that happened to me. We're not talking about emotional drama right now. We're talking about labeling. Very simply, that act, high emotion in the limbic system, moving to the prefrontal cortex by simply labeling the emotion, 1 or 2 words. Dan Siegel calls that name it to tame it. It's awesome, seesaw. High limbic, you can reduce the limbic load and intensity and arousal by going into your prefrontal cortex by simply labeling it. Then you're not suppressing it. You're recognizing, wow, I'm feeling this emotion come up. I see that. Now the director is going to label that, right? And then I'm going to do what needs to get done. I'm going to stay cool under pressure. Big idea. Seesaw. The director needs to be in charge. Make sure they are in charge. Build that ability. The basal ganglia, super cool. This is where your habits on autopilot. It's where, just imagine a team of pilots in your basal ganglia running the show. You want to groove as many things as you can to save your energy because it is finite. Your IQ going down by 5 to 15 points if you have constant bombardment of texts and emails. Reduce that. Slow down. Make some waves and prioritize. Prioritizing are our 5 big ideas. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, I think you'll really like the book. It's a great practical look at neuroscience applied to our lives and to our personal relationships as well. So there's a really cool theme as well between the couple and their kids and their relationship. David did a fantastic job. Thank you. And I hope you enjoyed. What was the idea that resonated the most? Think about it. It's just reminding you of something you already know. Write it down, share it with somebody, and most importantly, figure out how you're going to embody it in your life more starting today. And make today an awesome day. See you. Hi, this is Brian. I hope you enjoyed that PNTV episode. A lot of people don't know all the stuff I do beyond these free videos I share on YouTube, so I thought I'd do a quick video to give you an overview of our membership program that you can get access to and get a ton of other stuff. So here's a quick look. $10 a month, join the Optimal Living membership program. You get instant access to 250 philosopher's notes on some of the best optimal living books out there. Old school classics, positive psychology, modern stuff, mindfulness, peak performance, purpose, neuroscience, wealth, etc. And what you may not know is that in addition to the PNTV episodes, I create PDFs on all of these great books. So 6-page PDFs. Let's take a look at one of them. Joseph Campbell. You want to figure out how to live your hero's journey. Well, this is a great place to start. I basically pull out my favorite big ideas, riff on them, connect them to other books and other ideas, and help you apply this wisdom to your life today. That's what the PDF looks like. Again, we have 250 of these on all these different great books. And then I record those PDFs as an MP3. So you can listen to that MP3 while you're on a walk or working out or doing some errands or whatever. That is Philosopher's Notes. A lot going on there. And then in addition to Philosopher's Notes, you get access to Optimal Living classes, Optimal Living 101. Idea here is that all those great teachers come back to the same big ideas again and again and again. I distill those ideas into classes. Super practical, fun, inspiring classes ranging from Habits 101, Confidence 101, Getting Stuff Done 101, Meditation 101. Instant access to all those classes. And then future classes include Relationships 101, Energy 101, Purpose 101, Business, Goals, etc. Those are our full-length classes. And then I create micro classes, 2 to 3 to 5 minute little bursts of wisdom on my favorite great ideas from these great books across the domains that you want to optimize in your life. So we have dozens of these so far. I create 50 new micro classes every month and 10 new Philosopher's Notes every month for $10 a month. So we're blessed to have thousands of members who are enjoying the program and sharing some incredibly kind words with us. And super simple, $10 a month, cancel anytime. Would be honored to be a bigger part of your life. And I appreciate your support. And here's to optimizing and actualizing.